The guy who murdered 8 people had a bad day. What the F is wrong with Americans? Okay, first of all, some guy decides out of the blue that he wants to kill people. He doesn't go to a specific place. He goes to 3 separate places and kills people in each one. Then when he gets caught, part of the explanation given by the authorities for this act of disgusting violence is he had a bad day. Excuse me, what the frick? You know who had a bad day? Everyone at the places he shot. And you know who really had a bad day? The 8 people who got killed and the 2 who got shot but survived and their families. I'm actually serious, because that kind of mass shooting doesn't happen anywhere else in the world. Or at least not in a developed country. The mass shooting. The explanation. What the frick? Edit. I do realize this cop or that shooter don't represent all of Americans. My point was, there are so many shootings happening in the USA. Even school children. Kids fight, hit each other, but murder. Seriously, I think murder is kind of just another Wednesday here in the USA. Murdering a person is freaking horrific thing. I can't even imagine the fear you experience when you're doing something normal as just going to the mall or school and live through a shooting. This is not Warzone where you expect to be shot at. Edit 2. Some people have used that he's white so media and authorities try to defend him. Which is another thing that's put too much thought into. Who cares about his race or gender? I personally don't give a frick whether he was white, yellow, orange or blue. He is a freaking psycho. My point was that on one hand, mass shootings like this are not a rare occurrence in the USA, and on the other, the person who spoke to the media said something so incredibly stupid and honestly disrespectful. Imagine hearing that a loved one was shot because a murderer had a bad day. Just tell it how it is. A freaking psycho who had easy access to guns because of your laws went out on a shooting spree. Edit 3. Just to answer collectively on a lot of comments that repeat each other. To the peeps who keep saying and repeating we're not all like that. Yes, we know. But a German saying we're not all like that in 1942 wouldn't make Germany look any better now, would it? To the people who understood me and tried to answer the question without feeling personally offended, because they can rationally think it through and realize that while not all Americans are like that, and they are definitely not like that, there is an actual problem in your country. Thank you for your comment. To the people who use stats presenting that gun-related deaths are around 30,000 people a year, of which only about 2% are incident-related. This guy killed 8 people. Assume this happens every month for a year, that's 96 people. Out of 30,000, that's less than 1%. In numbers that might not sound bad, but a mass shooting every month is definitely bad. Not implying that's the case, just making a point about only 2%. To the people who attacked me and my post based on my presumable race, what the frick? To the grammar and perfectly correct people, yes, by Americans I meant people from the USA, even though there's North, South and Central America. My post was about an event that happened in the USA where people are also American, so I thought that was clear. Sorry for your confusion. Final edit. To the people saying I live in privilege outside of the USA and they have to live through this daily. What kind of fricked up brainwash minds do you have to think that not living in fear of getting shot at is a privilege? Do you see what I mean when I ask what is wrong with you? You've lived through so much gun-related violence you think people not living in it are privileged. No, they're not. It's how basic life should be. You had a freaking riot and stormed the Capitol because some of you, not a small number, didn't agree with the results of the vote for president. But mass shootings, we just live in it daily. You privileged butthole. I live in a fricked up Eastern European country where we don't have the best education. We don't have much opportunity for success. The quality of life is low. But yes, I live in privilege. Good God. And to the people who say mass shootings happen everywhere all the time but we don't hear about it because media has USA as the center of the world. Number. In Europe and I assume the rest of the world, we barely have covered any news since your president election and riots. And most if not all American news coverage is politically related. I feel like you're missing the point here. They aren't trying to justify the shooting like you make it sound. It sounds to me like they're making an important distinction. Was the shooting meticulously planned out, or was it done out of spur of the moment rage? Having a bad day lends itself to the conclusion that it was more of a random act of mental instability blowing up and not carefully put together to send a message. I think that's the real key here. You do realize that the average American does not share the opinion of the one random cop who was that department's spokesperson, right? At least in my online and in-person circles. Everyone is just as outraged and horrified. Americans are not just what you see on the news. First of all, there are 330-ish million of us. One hick sheriff said that, it's not like it was an official statement vetted by the government. People on the internet would be well served to realize that the 1,000 people who say stupid crap are not representative of the world at large. It's like when something is a big deal on Reddit or Twitter. 99.5% of the population has no clue what they're talking about. Honestly, somebody saying something stupid isn't indicative that the person is an idiot. People say stupid stuff all the time, not to mention misspeak or just not fully think out what they say all of the time. Something 300 million people. That's a lot of people. You can find poop eaters and dog screwers and all kinds of mentally disturbed people in a group that size. It's a tragedy, but we can't act like it's an American thing. But regular mass shootings are an American thing. Also, the examples listed are self-harmful at worst, not a danger to the rest of the population. Hey, look, another all-American suck thread. It's not about the shooter and what a piece of crap he is. It's what's wrong with Americans. What is wrong with Americans? No mental health care access. No job security, no representation in government, a corporate-dominated media intent on splintering the working class into antagonistic factions, daily reminders of the ecological genocide but no attempt to slow down the causes, the prospect of another 20 years of unwinnable wars, the domination of economic power over state and citizenry, increasingly lower standards. Let freedom ring. It is an act of anomic despair. People realize society is crumbling, but their miseducation has them direct their anger towards the other, pointed out by the very people degrading the country. Same with school shootings. The Columbine shooters claimed to be bullied, yet they literally were calling people racial slurs and other derogatory terms. Fucktards shot themselves because they were too pussed to face jail time. The fact that white mass murderers even have the option to kill themselves is fricked up. Black guys get shot for almost jaywalking or entering their own homes, while a white guy killing 8 Asians gets arrested without a problem. Americans are not the issue. Most of us hate this as much or worse than you. We have to live in a country that's like this. The problem isn't the people. It's our off-the-rails system. We're forced to work for often below a living wage. Most of us cannot afford basic health care, much less mental health care. Half the country thinks that working hard is the way to success when really, privilege and who you know is the only guarantee. And 99% of the wealth is controlled by buttholes like Jeff Bezos. Throw in highly toxic religious views that repress natural instincts and desires, and give easy access to guns, and what you have is a powder keg that only needs a match, the match being violent, unstable people unable to get help or even see that they need it due to tomorrow's terrible education system. The problem isn't us, it's the greedy buttholes running our country. What's worse, the shooter explained that Asian massage salons are sources of evil sexual temptation, and they tempted him and must be destroyed. Stop generalizing all Americans as being the same. Most of us are just as, if not more, outraged by the many flaws of our country. I believe most of us want real change. The amount of generalization us Americans get is wild. It's like people from Europe assume the US is the size of Switzerland and has a tiny population or something. Maybe it's the matter of how these cases are publicized in USA. Probably happens in other developed countries, but I sometimes wonder if some media outlets put it out there to seek outrage and bigger social reaction. Oh okay, haha, I got you up. You meant to say haha, me quirky redditor is also sharing the same feelings. Literally everyone else who's witnessed what happened has. This time though I'm going to be quirky and ask Americans what's wrong with them on a subreddit that you know dang sure it doesn't belong in to get karma and upvotes. Also, it'll also just group in every single American with something one person said that wasn't official and nobody agrees with. Nice karma farm. You know, most people think the sheriff is ridiculous for saying that, right? His views aren't representative of the American attitude on this horrible act of terrorism. You're not adding anything to the conversation. You're just spewing a rant that most people already agree with. Yes, this was a racist act of terrorism. Yes, the sheriff is an absolute racist moron for saying the shooter had a bad day. What's the point of saying what the F is wrong with Americans? In answer to your title, half our leaders are absolute freaking dipshits who keep defunding basic education, so half our population, minimum, are absolute freaking morons who prioritize opinions and how it feels over evidence and facts. This will get buried in the mountains of replies, but still, the ownership of firearms is a deeply entrenched part of American culture, like freedom of speech and unquestioning respect of anyone in the military. The American media does far best to treat mass shootings like natural disasters, unavoidable, inevitable, and definitely not something that we could ever put an end to. Treating them any other way would bring too much backlash. Most Americans are good hard-working people, but there are still a lot of idiots that get a lot coverage that make it seem like we are all idiots. Go to Honduras. If you come out alive, make another post. I'm not even American, but do people realize how freaking big USA is and how many inhabitants they have? Murder is just another Wednesday. That is such a load of crap. Just come out and say I hate America. No need for that big butt text. And it won't get better till we look at the mental health crisis. Nobody looks at it. Nobody wants to. It's a long-term, messy, painful fix that will take a while. So here's what we do. We ban gun or two or restrict them in some way and declare victory. We never even stop and look at or do anything to think, why the heck someone decided to murder another person? Why did they not get help? Here is an example to help you. Had a young family member who was on meds to stabilize during some mental challenges. She had a reaction to them, as in a medical reaction to them. Went to the ER. Do you think they treated the medical condition? The hives? Her throat closing up? You know, the potentially life-threatening condition? Nope. They saw she was on drugs for mental health. They assigned the 16-year-old girl a male security guard, had him go into a room with her to strip, so she could not hurt herself, and change into a gown. 2 hours later, her drug reaction calmed down on its own because the hospital never treated it. But that is the state of mental health treatment in the US, and we wonder why we miss people who are mentally ill. Why they never look for help until they are so damned sick they are murdering people. But we have not done a single thing to address that. With this shooter, we will ban some guns, add a background check or two, maybe restrict carrying weapons so you can't carry them in salons. And we will maybe even name the bill after one of the victims. In the end though, we will never deal in the mental health system that allowed a man like this to fall into an abyss where he framed a mindset that left 8 people dead and 2 injured. That is why this will continue. That is why these shootings will continue. I think my biggest issue with this whole thing isn't just the he had a bad day narrative, but also that it was obviously a hate crime. From what I can get from the news, all of the people he killed were Asians or people of race. Them trying to pass this 21-year-old man as a kid and making him sympathetic to the public is disgusting. If you want to kill Asians, shoot up an engineering class at literally any university. If you want to kill prostitutes in broad daylight, shoot up any Asian massage parlor. It's pretty obvious why he targeted them. Race might have been some kind of factor, but I can't see that being an assumption. Guess who has the most stabbing in the world? China, then India, then the US. People want to be violent. They just don't have the same obsessive gun culture and lack of mental health awareness as us. Combine that with far more cultural diversity than anywhere in the world and people just aren't going to get along. In reality, the thing that the world shares in common that has killed many billions more than guns is religion. Don't say my country doesn't have this problem, without saying your country. America is in a bad way right now and I have no idea what a viable solution is. I still love it and will try to make it a better place. Frick violence and hate. You realize the US is number 55 on the list of homicides when accounting for populations, right? Places like Mexico have 5x the homicides per 100,000 people and Russia is nearly double. Not saying that makes it okay, not by a long shot, but the US has a huge population compared to other countries besides China and India. We have just over 5 homicides per 100,000 people, not the number OP presented. Of course the US is one of the highest first world countries with homicides, which is definitely an issue. Places like the UK and Germany has less than 2 murdered per 100,000 people. Well, the random American doesn't feel like that. And when it comes to mass shootings, really don't have that many. If you cut out 5 metropolitan cities, then our gun crime rate drops in half. Nothing. Only the guy and police said he had a bad day, not all of America. ISTG people just need to stop being like, all Americans are the same, sure. Don't worry, the 2 that survived will probably have it worse than the people who died because of the medical debt they'll likely have to pay off for the rest of their lives. Yet, I doubt the trauma they will deal with day after day for years to come will be more difficult than blowing off some medical debt. It's going to continue to happen. No one is ever going to take care of this problem. We are simply learning to become numb and live with it and hopes we're never in the crossfire of it. I'm from Vegas, where we had the worst mass shooting in US history, Route 91, back in 2018. I remember our sheriff told us to always be vigilant wherever we go and always look for the nearest exit whenever we're out and about. And sadly that's what I do whenever I'm anywhere. Friends have called me paranoid, but you never know nowadays. It's become the new normal. Last year was the only year we probably didn't have mass shooting because of the lockdown. But wait until everything is lifted and we're all cleared to go out. Just wait. He'll get sympathy because he was a confirmed incel. Some men find it easier to justify why a man would murder 8 random women than why a woman wouldn't want to sleep with them. I don't appreciate being associated with that fucktard who went on the rampage or some of our stupid cops. Not every American goes on a shooting rampage. In fact, these sadistic fricks are the extreme minority. But you're not likely to hear a headline that someone didn't go on a rampage. No, you will see stories about the people who did. And America has a frick ton of people, meaning we have a frick ton of buttholes who do this. And Reddit is majority American, like it or not, so you will see more coverage of this here. So we are not all sick fricks who murder minorities when our sexual frustration becomes too much. And you can go post that on Till because the title suggests you didn't know that till now. If you don't think mass killings happen throughout the world, you should read more about life outside the USA. Holy crap. Using the term American this way shows some type of anti-American sentiment that is almost akin to racism. Americans are not all alike. America is not filled with people who all share similar beliefs. Why do bad Americans have to represent all Americans? Crap is getting old. There are really good people here. Stop watching the news so much. Frick off with this what's wrong with Americans bulls. I'm all for ostracizing and prosecuting pieces of crap like that guy, but you need to get the frick off your high horse. So sick of people seeing the worst of our country and thinking, well, clearly that's just all of them. How would you like it if we started judging you by the worst of your country? But 1. How does this post make it up but I need 15 iterations just to avoid the auto mod? 2. The interviewer asked what the guy's motive was and the cop replied with what the shooter had said. They weren't the cop's opinions, it was the shooter's justification that the interviewer asked for. 3. Screw you, you pompous prick. If this is a common opinion among Europeans, then our 24/7 news has legitimately become a national security risk. It's one thing to make us pointlessly afraid for clicks. It's another thing when it makes us look like bloodthirsty savages. Russia couldn't pay for better propaganda. Our systems run and made generally by liberals cause extreme mental issues. Our schools are worse than our prisons, and our prisons make innocent and non-violent people into murderers and killers. Anyone who wants to reform those systems are called racists and fascists for some reason. Our government is filled with 2 opposing corrupt sides, and anyone who isn't corrupt is butchered by the media, which for some reason people still listen to. That's what's wrong with us. I had the benefit of reading through your original post and all updates and edits. His race does matter here because it highlights 2 things. 1. Almost all mass shootings that take place in the US are by white men. 2. There has been a huge uptick in violence against Asian Americans over the past year, which just so happens to coincide with Trump's made-up verbiage of the China virus in reference to COVID-19. Guns law and access is a huge problem across the board. There is way too much gun violence in the US generally speaking. but most of it is within the same demographic and not all is fatal. It all sucks. As a resident, trust me, it's not fun when you hear gunshots on a near daily basis. Living in a city, by the way, I do live in Atlanta, which is where this massacre took place. Poor or no mental health resources, paired with easy gun access, and combined with a growing xenophobic, nationalist, extremist population is not a winning recipe. You have a very skewed idea of America, obviously. Shootings are incredibly rare here, no matter what Reddit tells you. It's not the Wild West here where every spat ends in gunfire. In fact, the majority of counties in the US have exactly 0 homicides annually. What scores up our average is a handful of tiny inner city areas, with strict gun control, might I add, that have an extreme level of gun violence. Kind rude that you said Americans instead of the sheriff, but I agree he did a terrible thing and there should be no excuses. What the frick is wrong with people who judge a whole country because of the acts of a few? Seriously though, I know you've responded to this, but just wanted to add my frick you, too. The cops repeated the excuse the shooter said verbatim, as they often do, but the news spun in it as the official position of the police. You have been fooled like so many of us. We are like puppets except easier manipulate into yelping and stomping. We're all hopped up on Mountain Dew, Doritos and McDonald's. It's all we know. People kill other people sometimes. It sucks. This kind of crap doesn't just happen in America though. People all over the world, for the history of people, kill other people. Sometimes it's described as war. Sometimes a crusade. Sometimes oppression. Sometimes it's in the name of peace, land, money. Oh, and sometimes people are just bat crap crazy. Plenty of serial killers in other countries. The most prolific in fact. End countryism. God, I wish someone was there to stop that madman. I'ma take a hot take. I wish more good guys were armed. Someone could have stopped him. That's what the guy said, not the cop. The cop was just repeating it to the news. You're taking one bad apple and applying it to everyone. Why do you people assume most Americans are the same based off a small group? It's very annoying how many questions just stereotypes all Americans to be just the same. I understand it's not all oh shut up, you know exactly what you're doing. The enormous amount of edits and defensive statements are because of the phrasing of your question. What the F is wrong with Americans? You should be asking, is there something wrong with Americans that caused this to occur exclusively there? Your question implies that there is something wrong, and that of course elicits many defensive responses from people who take it as a personal attack. The exact same can be phrased of any group and any population in the world. In response to specifically your question, Americans, as with any population in any nation, have the same occurrence on average of mental health problems. The difference is in America, there is a much easier access to firearms, and this creates the possibility of tragedies such as this to occur. No, saying not all Americans is not even remotely close to not all Germans. In 1942, some of the German public was in the dark or denial of what was happening, but by and large there was widespread xenophobia that led to literal genocide. People knew their neighbors were being rounded up but never asked where they went or what happened to them. You have to remember, by the end of the war nearly 31% of the German population had served in the military. People knew. This head in sand mentality is entirely different than not all Americans, which in this case literally means exactly that. Not all Americans suffer from mental health issues. Not all Americans believe in universal access to firearms. Most believe in sensible access and sensible use. In fact, the problems are mental health and the stigma for getting help, the ease of access to firearms. To answer the non-inflammatory question you should have asked, is there something wrong with Americans? The gun control and mental health crisis facing America are difficult and complex issues. They are complicated by the difficulties that come with amending our constitution and making welfare programs more available. Is there something wrong specifically with the American population that make this a uniquely American problem? Your question is based on a snapshot view of American culture and prejudices you already have. It isn't in fact a question that anyone is too afraid to ask. It's a rhetorical question with inflammatory and xenophobic implications undertones. All of this boils to two main issues down: mental health and the associated non-help you receive because health insurance and gun laws, gun security. I have the feeling to buy a weapon you have to pay $100 for your first gun and that's it. Introducing a background check and a mental stability test would be a first step. Health insurance and overhaul of gun laws. Fight for it, guys. It's your country. Yesterday I've seen on Reddit a guy who was bullied by his neighbors and couldn't do anything against it. The video footage I saw shows the street and how he simply kills these neighbors. First with a pistol, and when the pistol doesn't do the magic he goes back into the house to get his AR-15. Another shows how a man shot by his GF in their car. They have an argument. Nothing big. Just by coincidence she shoots him in the head. If you want to change something you have to mute the distraction and noise. The root of gun violence is growing out of the issues I already mentioned. I think wording this "what the frick is wrong with America" instead of "what the frick is wrong with Americans" would make it a little less offending to people. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.